This is a last section of the three-part series I've been talking about on marketing, hospitality, and retention. Now, we've already talked about marketing and hospitality, so now's the time for us to finally talk about retention. Now, I've heard in the past that this church has had a new member class about every other month. Now, this sounds pretty good. Well, it sounds pretty good until we look around on Sunday morning. I know this church wants to blame the low attendance on the last 2 years of COVID. And yes, COVID did hurt many churches. But Windermere Union Church was in decline long before COVID. Let's look at the numbers. We'll begin in 2012. We talked about this year before when we talked about church growth. 2012 was when this church had its highest average attendance. In 2012, Windermere Union Church was averaging 120 people in worship. Now, this video is about retention. So let's go year by year and see what happened. You don't have to be an expert in complex data to see the major red flags that'll jump out at you. You only need to have the ability to do simple math. Let's go one step further back, 2011. This church averaged 102 people in worship. But that same year that you worshiped 102 people in worship, you had a net gain of 17 members. And then the next year in 2012, your average worship attendance went up to 120. This is pretty good. So in 2012, this was clearly a good year for Windermere Union Church. But let's see what happened after that year. In 2012, the average attendance was 120 people. And that year, you gained 19 new members. That was a net gain of 19 new members. This means that after we take out any losses due to people leaving the church or dying, we still were able to net 19 new members in 2012. Now follow the numbers. In 2012, we worshiped 120 people. We added 19 new members, and then the following year, our attendance dropped to 109. Here's our first red flag. How does anyone add 19 new members and then have your worship attendance drop by 11 people the following year? That's a major retention issue. Okay, let's keep going. Maybe that's just one off year. So in 2013, we had an average attendance of 109 people. We also added a net gain of 13 new members to the church. The following year, our worship attendance went up to 116. So that's pretty good. Our attendance went up. It's a good thing to add 7 new people in worship. But that's after adding 13 new members to the church. Attendance grew, but it grew at a much slower rate than we were gaining new members. That's another retention red flag. Let's keep going with the numbers. In 2014, our average attendance was 116. Again, we had a net gain of 13 people, but our attendance remained flat. The following year, in 2015, our average attendance was 116, and just like the year before. But we come to 2015, and our net membership was only 0. We didn't gain any members, but we didn't lose any members. But the following year, our worship attendance continued to decline. In 2016, we had a net gain of 12 members. But the following year, our average weekly attendance dropped all the way down to 103 people in worship. In the short 6-year window, by the way, the 6-year window we're calling the heyday, the glory years of the church, at least in recent history. In this 6-year window, we had a net gain of 74 members. That's a net gain of 74 members. That's a pretty incredible number. Yet from 2012 to 2017, before the pandemic, so none of those can be blamed on the pandemic, the worship attendance dropped from 120 only to 103 in worship. Since this time, the church has cleaned up its membership rolls, and we've removed 100 people who no longer attend this church. We might not really be able to say that we had a true net gain of 74 people in 6 years because we probably weren't cleaning the membership rolls as firmly as we should have. We had 100 people at least who just quietly stopped attending and we never noticed. This is a retention problem. If we go back to that 6-year period that we've been examining and look at the people we gained, not just the net, because now we can play games with the net of, well, we weren't recording properly or this or that. Let's just look at the gross numbers. Just look at the gross numbers. During a 6-year period, we added 83 new members. Those numbers don't lie. They're in the books. They're people that we gained. They went through the membership classes. They stood in front of the church. They went through all of the hoops in order to physically join the church. 83 people in 6 years. But during that same time, our attendance drops from 120 to 103. Where did all those new members go? How does anyone gain 83 people, new members who jump through all the hoops to join the church and yet drop attendance so rapidly from 120 to 103? We have a major retention problem at Windermere Union Church. The problem gets worse when we're moving forward. We're not even to the bad part yet. It gets worse when we're moving forward towards the COVID years and then into the COVID years. You realize 2016, according to our books at least, is the last year that the church has seen a true net gain in membership? Think about that. It's been 7 years since this church has had a true gain in membership. In 2016, it shows that we had a gain of new members, but that was really only because you had a large confirmation class. There were no other new members coming in from any other way, at least according to our books. Of course, a large confirmation class is a good thing, but these are people who are already here. They're kids of other people. It's not truly adding new people to the church. Now, of course, we need to ask ourselves another major question. If we had a major, big confirmation class in 2016, where are all the youth from that large confirmation class? We have a retention problem at Windermere Union Church. This retention problem was going on long before COVID. Now we come to Easter of this year. On Easter of this year, we had a worship attendance of 101 people, and everyone was so excited and happy to see this many people in worship. But again, we need to have a reality check. This was Easter when everyone comes to church. Now, according to our membership rolls, we currently have 191 people on our membership rolls after they've been scrubbed twice. This means that on Easter, on your new pastor's second Sunday in the pulpit, at least 90 church members chose not to come to church. Even with the curiosity of a new minister combined with Easter, both those double whammies, over 90 of our members chose not to worship. This is nearly half our membership roll that did not come to worship. Now, for the combined celebration of Easter and a new pastor, you would think people would have showed up. That number of the MIA members on Easter is in reality much larger than what we presented so far. We had many visitors on Easter. My wife and I are not part of that 191 members, but we were counted towards the 101 people in worship, I'm sure. A couple of the band members are not part of the 191 members, but I'm sure they were counted towards the membership on Easter Sunday. I know I had at least 5 friends who were attending that day. That's 5 people who are not part of the 191. Many people on Easter Sunday brought family and friends who are not part of the membership rolls. So that 101 people who were there on Easter includes many people who were not members of this church, not part of that 191 people. So in reality, we had far more than just 90 members who chose not to worship with us. We likely had more than half our membership who chose not to worship with us during a combined celebration of a new minister in Easter. That's a major retention problem. Now, I know this video has been all doom and gloom up to this point, but it's a very important point for this congregation to see these honest numbers. Everyone who attends this church absolutely loves the church. But clearly over the past 10 years or more, I just don't have the numbers to research more, we can clearly see that scores of people, and that's not an understatement, I showed you the numbers, scores of people do not like this church enough to return to it. And recently on Easter Sunday, those who came on Easter Sunday love this church. But more than half this church does not love this church enough to even attend on one of the biggest Sundays this church has had in many years. We are always focused on what we love about the church. And of course, it's great to be focused on what we love about the church. But we also need to spend our time asking ourselves what others don't like about our church. Why do so many people choose not to return to worship? Why do they stop attending? Why is it that we added large groups of new members over the course of many years, and at the same time our attendance declined? As we sit in worship with our rose-colored glasses, telling ourselves that everything is so wonderful, we're blind to the reasons so many people do not want to worship with us. We need to take off the rose-colored glasses and ask ourselves some hard questions. Why is it that pre-COVID, before the excuse, before COVID, during those years that Windermere kind of uses their glory years when the attendance was good, we brought in 84 new members, and that's what probably everyone remembers is all these new people coming into the church. Everything was so good. Yet at the same time, our attendance slid from 120 to 103 before COVID. We need to ask ourselves why half our church membership would not attend with us on Easter this year. Even not attending with the added curiosity of a new minister after 27 years. That wasn't enough to bring in more than half our congregation. Instead of repeating everything we love about the church, we need to ask why more than half our church dislikes our church so much that they wouldn't even come on such a huge Sunday for our church. What barrier is keeping them from church? And maybe more importantly, how can we prevent losing future new members? We're trying to attract new people. How do we not lose them right after we attract them? Now, moving forward, the honest reality is it's going to be easier for us to attract new members than it will be for us to reclaim old members that have stopped attending. That's just a very hard proposition to do. It's not impossible. It's not that no one will come back, but it takes a lot more energy, and it's less likely to happen to regain some of those old members. If they're lost, they're lost. I'll reach out to them. I'd love to have them back, but they left for a reason. But we can learn from the losses of the older members. And we can apply what we learned for retaining the new members that we're going to gain from this point forward. There are many reasons people stop attending church, or any church. There are many reasons. And over the course of time, we should address each and every one of these reasons to help with our retention problem. But by far, the one clear, resounding reason why people stop attending any church is simply because they do not feel they belong. Think of what drives you to attend church every Sunday. At the top of the list is probably your friendships and your connections at this church. The incredible love you feel from the people at this church. The smiles and the warm hugs. The feeling of family. But all of these positive things that I just named are also part of the problem. The feeling of this church being a loving family will only drive you to church if you feel like you're part of the family. If you saw the last video on hospitality, I mentioned that a visitor coming to a loving family church feels like they're crashing someone else's family reunion. Yes, we feel like a loving family. And yes, we say to our blue in the face that we accept everyone as family. But this does not change the fact that a visitor feels what a visitor feels. And a visitor feels awkward, out of place, and uncomfortable. They feel like an outsider. If you saw the hospitality video, then think of all the things that we're not doing on Sunday morning that should be done to make a visitor feel welcome. Think of all the barriers a visitor faces on Sunday morning, their first impression of the church. Think of the limited contact they actually really get on Sunday morning. Oh yes, a warm greeting at the door, a warm greeting from a person or two on passing to the sanctuary. a warm greeting at the passing of the peace. But the rest of the hour, they're alone. They're an outsider. And then they go home. That's just Sunday morning. It'll be the task of hospitality to improve the visitor experience on Sunday morning. But even when we make all the improvements to the Sunday morning experience, this still is not church involvement. It's still not making them part of the family. They'll never feel like they're part of the church family until they are intimately connected with a smaller group. A small group can be involvement in mission projects, attending Sunday school, Bible study, small groups. It can be attending fellowship activities like game night, men's fellowship, women's fellowship, a young adult group, a mom's night out. It can be connecting with a support group, a prayer group, yoga class, or any spiritual gathering that we can come up with. It can be connecting with a working group like a team or a committee or a board. It can be helping with the tech team or serving coffee on Sunday morning. Anywhere we can connect people to a smaller group where people can begin to feel like they are making intimate friendships in the church. This is the foundation to retention. If we do not connect a visitor or new member to a small group beyond worship, then we will not retain them in worship. We can talk about preaching and music all we want for worship, but if a person does not have groups or friends to see on Sunday morning, they will feel like an outsider. They will feel like they do not belong, and they will stop attending. Now, we'll be getting a new church management program, a software program in the church office. In the future videos, I'll spend an entire video on this new church management software program. This software is going to revolutionize how this church functions. One thing that we'll be able to do is track every single member and visitor. We'll be able to see who is involved in which group at the church. But more importantly, we'll be able to gather this list of people of who are not part of any group. We will target this list and build strategic ways to get these people connected to groups within the church. Getting them connected is not going to happen with Sunday morning announcements in the bulletin. Getting them connected is not going to happen with verbal announcements on Sunday morning. Getting them connected is not going to happen with announcements on a website. Getting people connected to a smaller group at the church will only happen through a personal invitation. Now, there are those rare occasions someone can point to that someone joins a church group, a small group, without an invitation, but that's rare. That takes an extroverted person or someone who just really wanted to be connected. Almost always, it's because someone personally invited them. So once we have our church management software set up, once we have logged in every single group that this church has of every brand and kind, once we've logged in every single member and which groups each member is connected to, it's going to take a long time to do all this data entry. Then we'll get a list of people who are not connected to anything. We can just punch out who's not connected to anything. It'll spit out to us. Now, we don't send them cards or emails begging them to attend events. We talk with them. We get to know them. What are their interests? If they love to build websites, then let's introduce them to the tech team. If they're looking for mission opportunities, then let's introduce them to other people in the church who really love the mission opportunities at the church. They just want to make a friend. Maybe invite them to one of our fellowship gatherings. This process can begin the very first day of their very first visit at the church. But no, we don't want to overwhelm them and force them to get involved too quickly. But on the other hand, from the very first day, we can talk to the visitors. We should be talking to, I hope we're talking to the visitors. But not just a hi, hello, and a passive, fake, passing by. Ask them what brought them to church. Ask them what they're interested in. Ask them about their family. Visiting a church for the first time means they're looking for something. What are they looking for? That's where their connection point is. Maybe they're just looking to make friends and they love the golf. We'll invite them to or introduce them to another golfer at the church. If they're trained as a Stephen minister from their last church and they're just moving and coming into a new church, maybe we invite them to, talk to some of the other Stephen ministers. They get to know them, not to join, at least at this point, but just, these are some other Stephen ministers we have. You guys have something in common. If they just moved from Florida or from Chicago to Florida, introduce them to someone in a church who is from Chicago. This is going to help build a connection. If they're interested in learning and Bible studies and things like that, then introduce them to the Sunday school class, introduce them to anyone who does any Bible studies at the church. If they sing, introduce them to Troy or someone from the choir. But on the first visit, we're not pushing them to get involved. All we're doing is building friendships, building relationships, and specifically, strategically trying to find people of similar interest to connect them to. Maybe those introductions will bring them back for our second visit. Then after a few visits, and they build a relationship with, let's say, a choir member. And then that choir member, after they've built a relationship, then invites them to the next choir practice. Even says, maybe I'll pick you up. After the relationship is built, and then the invitation is extended, they're far more likely to attend choir practice than if they just saw it in a bulletin. We can put it in a bulletin. We can put it in bold print in the bulletin. We can put it 3 or 4 times in a bulletin. We can do whatever we want to in the bulletin. But that returning visitor is not likely to join the choir because they feel like they're crashing someone else's family reunion. They need a personal invite. They will know that they're truly accepted at choir practice if someone who they've built a relationship over the course of a few weeks or several weeks at that point invites them to choir practice. Announcements in whatever form they're presented, whether online or on paper or verbally, never gets anyone to come to anything. The only worth for announcements is to remind people who were already planning to attend the event of what time the event is and where they're meeting. Now, once we have a master plan to get people into small groups and we overcome these retention issues, we will get people to come to church and stay. So to recap the overall plan, remember the 3-part plan? Marketing. We're going to market the church very heavily, like very digitally, online, through paper, through mail, all these sources. We're going to market the church, let people know we exist. Once people know we exist and we get them to visit our church, then they're going to see our newly improved hospitality. And our visitor experience is going to be greatly heightened and very strategic as we work to reduce the anxiety and guide people through the Sunday morning experience, showing them love, not just for a second or two at the door or at the entrance or during passing the peace, but showing them love and care through their entire visit. We'll follow up with that visit. We'll call them during the week. We'll give them a card during the week. We'll give them a welcome package, whatever. We'll follow up with them somehow to make sure that we're thinking about them. Now, as they continue to return a second week and a third week and continue, then we begin to build the relationships. We begin that relationship building on day 1, but then we continue building that relationship the second Sunday, the third Sunday, the fourth Sunday. And we keep introducing them to other people, especially people who have a similar interest. Then the people with a similar interest over a course of time builds the relationship and then invites that visitor to a shared interest group that you each have. This is going to greatly improve our retention, and it will create new, long-time future members of this church. And this church will grow.